everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take on the latest failures from Joe Biden. Putin will pay a price for interfering with the 2020 election, and he'll have to get off my lawn. What is he doing? President Biden declined to elaborate on the consequences for the Russian President Vladimir Putin would face. Why would you threaten Putin? Why? What is the purpose of this? To start a war with Russia? The relationship between the U.S. and Russia is already kind of low. Why are you going to stir things up? Oh, right. Your polls that make you so popular aren't real. That's why. And you're trying to distract everybody from China, who you love because they give you those fat stacks, right, Joe? There was also this weird video of Joe coming out in a press conference with his hands like this, which was weird enough. It's like he washed his hands like he was a surgeon and didn't want to touch anything, but he was outside. So, like, why wouldn't he put his hands down and walk like a normal person? I don't understand. He's something very off about him. Now, a lot of people are saying this was a green screen deal. Right, Joan? A green screen? Here, why don't you take a little nap? You're a little grouchy. Some kind of green screen. To which I say, why? Why would they have a green screen of Biden on the White House lawn with reporters? It sounds far too elaborate. Now, if they had a green screen during that horrible speech he gave, well, maybe I could understand it, but there were people shouting at him in the off cameras, so it does look weird though. His hand seems to cross in front of the microphones in weird position to make it look like he's been superimposed over the whole thing, and the fact that he holds his hands in a weird position doesn't help either. But I don't know. I'm very skeptical that it's some sort of fake video. And you'd have to get those reporters involved in it. And I don't know if they have enough loyal people to keep their mouth shut for something like that. But I guess it's possible. But I think it's really dumb, Politico, for Biden to threaten Putin. I mean, has Putin threatened us? I don't think so. And again, Putin's no choir boy. The way he runs his country and does things, it's not exactly great. But that being said, why poke the bear? There's no reason to do that. If anything, you should be trying to mend the relationship between the United States and Russia, a relationship that you effed up with your party, if you'll recall. Russia recalls an ambassador after Joe Biden threatens Vladimir Putin and calls him a killer with no soul. Yeah, and this was a weird story where he tells a story about how he looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes and he had no soul, and Putin turned to him and said to him, yeah, that's right, or something weird like that. No one believes this story. There's no way this story happened. I think Joe is just a liar. And at this point, I think he's just making stuff up off the top of his head. This idea that they interfered with the 2020 election, again, it's like every country monitors every other country as much as it can, especially the United States. And Russia's certainly here, and they're monitoring things. Whether actually they could do anything is a whole different story. China is definitely doing it. China has been exposed as having over 1 million spies in the West. So there's no doubt they have people here. And they've got people online definitely shilling for China. So that makes sense. But he's going after Russia like they're the big guns. And I think it's to distract everybody from China. And possibly to gin up a war against Russia. I don't know. Video. Psaki says Trump to blame for increase in anti-Asian hate crimes despite Atlanta suspect blaming sex addiction. This is the guy who shot up 3 massage parlors. He killed 8 people, including 6 Asian women who I guess worked at the parlors. Um, it's a terrible, terrible, horrible event, and naturally, Psaki and the Biden administration are going to try to exploit it for some points. Um, to blame Trump for this is utter insanity for a lot of reasons. This idea that every time something happens, oh, well, it's Trump's fault. Even if you can sell people on, oh, well, Trump's a real racist. I thought he was racist against black people. Now he's racist against Asian people, too. It's just like everything that comes down the pike. Well, that's Trump's fault. It's disgusting. It really is. And I'm really tired of it. It's, it's just really beneath people to act this way. And it's not like it's hurting Trump. Trump's following is solid. But to do this, it's just pathetic. It just makes Biden look weak. It makes Biden look weak. To blame Trump. How often are we going to be blaming Trump a year from now for things? It's utter insanity. These people have no good policies. They have none. Nothing. And everywhere they go, they just blame other people. Joe's not responsible for anything, including, apparently, that his son's a sex addict, a drug addict, apparently. And maybe has some other psychological problems, at least if the text in his laptop are to be believed. But, oh, that's not Joe's fault. It must be somebody else's fault, right? After years of trying to curb QAnon messaging, Twitter suspends more than 150,000 accounts. Theory claims satanic cabal leading crimes such as cannibalism and human trafficking. Twitter, I mean, they're at this point, do they have anybody left to ban? Okay, now you're going to ban those guys. Who's next? Telling you, leftists, they're coming for you. First, and here's the order, I think. First, it's going to be the moderate Dems. They're all going to go. Then it's going to be the very liberal Dems. People like Dave Rubin and Brett Weinstein, they're all going to start to go. Twitter will ban them. There'll be some incident, and then Twitter will use that to get rid of them. That's going to be this year, I think. This year and into next year. They're going to start banning sort of normal Democrat people or former liberals. They'll all go. Then it'll be moderate Democrats. Guys like Joe Manchin. They'll go after him. And he's really more of a conservative Dem. They'll go after him. They'll go over to people like him. People who generally agree with the Democratic Party, except on a few issues. And they'll just go after them, hammer and tongs. And then this will accelerate to the point at which, like, people like me, I think I'm already pretty shadow banned. I mean, the engagement on my Twitter account is bizarre at best. I got about 1,700 followers, and my engagement is next to nothing. It's next to nothing. And you could say, oh, well, that's just your Twitter account. It's a lot. It's just like YouTube, right? YouTube and Twitter, I'm about, YouTube, I'm at 2162 in terms of subscribers, and I get about 20 hits on a video like this, 20 views. Sometimes it goes up to 50 or 100, but the engagement just isn't there. They're nerfing more comments. I got Art Vader. One of your comments got nerfed. Your link to the whole Biden thing. I've got videos with 3 or 4 or 5 comments, and you can't see any of them. I don't know what the comments were. So YouTube is killing off engagement. Meanwhile, I'm on other sites like Gab, like BitChute. Engagement is fine there, and I have fewer followers. I have more engagement there with fewer followers than I do on YouTube and Twitter. I think they're gaming the system in order to keep their appearances up. But eventually, it's just not going to be worth it anymore. I mean, Hammer already basically left Twitter. He kept his account to sort of peek in, but there's just no point to being on a platform that censors you. It's just no point. So eventually, I think people will get frustrated and just leave. And that's okay to the left to say, yeah, let those people leave. But it's going to start to frustrate. The algorithm will flag normal people. You know, and you know what I mean by normal people. They'll flag people who aren't even political, and it probably already has. Anything, you know, somebody has a weird name that sounds like a curse word, somebody mispronounces a word, gets flagged. All this stuff is just going to cascade to the point at which YouTube and Twitter will have to beg people to come back. But it won't be able to, because it'll say, well, please come back, just abide by our TOS. And then they'll go, well, what's your TOS? And they won't be able to explain it because it'll be so complicated and convoluted. And basically what they want in a TOS is believe what we believe. That's what they really want, but they can't say that. So instead, they try to keep adding all these rules, hoping that, well, eventually you won't be able to talk about anything else except what we like. You know, you won't be able to discuss transgenderism unless it's in the most positive light. You won't be able to discuss Democrats unless it's the most positive light. That's not the way the world works. People will get frustrated and leave. You know, the UK has the same problem, and they have all these hate crime laws. Same thing with Australia. I don't think we're going to get that here. I think what we're going to get is possibly Twitter either is going to be either will collapse or get somehow subsidized by the government. Or maybe it'll go the way of like MySpace. People will just leave it. It'll just be irrelevant no matter what they do. And speaking of tweets, House Democrats vote against requiring illegal immigrants to receive beer virus test after crossing the border. And this is from Steve Scalise. Breaking. The House Democrats just voted against requiring beer virus tests for illegal immigrants crossing the southern border. But they still want your businesses locked down and your schools closed. Their double standards are disgraceful. It's not a double standard, really. It's just insanity. They want to let in illegal immigrants and not test them for the beer virus. If anybody should be tested for the beer virus, it's people entering this country. All the people entering this country. Unless they've just come back from a country and say, oh, I just had a COVID vaccine. I went to Israel for my COVID vaccine, which some people have done. Or, they've been vaccinated over there or whatever. This is a part of border control. It always has been. You can't let someone with a disease into your country that could spread it. What if these people have a more virulent strain of the beer virus? Then you're just going to let it in the country, let it kill a bunch of people? And it doesn't help that the facilities on the border are completely overcrowded now. Biden's not doing anything about it other than trying to deny it, trying to say, well, we'll have no choice but to let these people in the country. You haven't tested them. You either got to admit, like, well, testing isn't going to matter, or the beer virus doesn't matter, and let everybody open their business, which I sense that they're trying to do, but they're so effing inept in the Democratic states, like my state. Governor Murphy is finally going to get the 50% capacity. I think on Friday, like, finally, Delaware's been open for months. It's just open. The restaurants are just open. The bars are open. You can go to Delaware and party. Florida's open. Connecticut is even opening up. Oh, but Murphy's going to do it his way. Just like Cuomo did, right, Murphy? And meanwhile, he just had, was some sort of Irish event for St. Paddy's Day, and Murphy's Irish, obviously. And he was out there, no mask, singing and dancing, having a good time. MSNBC duped by viral fake news claim that Hunter's laptop came from Russia. Duh. We already knew a total chain of custody. Hunter left the laptop. He signed off on it. He even came back with a part for it. Still forgot about it. Never went back for it. Hunter's own lawyer asked for the computer back. All right? That's it. That's your proof right there. Why would Hunter's lawyer ask for a computer that wasn't his? Why? Why would he do that? Oh, they're saying that's your computer. We better ask for it back. Why? What would he care? He would say, that's not my computer. That's what he would say. That's what anybody would say. It's not my computer. But he's all over it. Personal messages. His various accounts are on there. His passwords. Pictures of him. Video of him. It's his computer. I mean, what more proof do you need? What has to be on there to convince you it's the Hunter Biden's laptop? What has to be on there? A video of him saying, this is my laptop? I mean, that's practically what's on there. It's video of him. He's naked in some of the videos. He's smoking crack in the videos. He hasn't denied it's his. The text messages have been confirmed by one of Hunter Biden's business associates, a guy who worked with him and got some of the same text messages. He knows. It's been corroborated. MSNBC still went with the story. Yep. They are so trying to blame Russia. And again, Russia's like Trump. They're not perfect by any stretch. But this frame up, this is going to be a disaster. Because even your own people won't trust you. Once they finally get the message, wait a minute, you faked this evidence? I mean, it's all coming out now. This came out. The Washington Post had to admit that they completely fabricated some quotes, or their source did. Their source fabricated some quotes. Oh, well, why did you print them? How did you get it corroborated if they were fake quotes from one source? And everybody repeated those fake quotes. They even repeated it in Congress when they tried to impeach Trump. Oh, but that's not your fault. Oh, now there's a retraction. Don't worry, Biden's in now. It's okay. Top filmmakers dropping bomb on major Biden scandal. I don't know how big of a bomb this is, but there's this Irish couple. They're doing a movie. They are, I guess it's a documentary about the Bidens. They're doing a crowdfunding for it. It's called My Son Hunter, and it's all about the laptop. I don't know how real it'll be. I don't know these guys, but just thought I'd tell you about it. Kamala Harris dodges questions on detained kids at border. I haven't been briefed. Oh, you haven't been briefed on the biggest news story in the last, 4 or 5 days? Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I must have just... there were so many things on the list. Well, what were you briefed on? I guess you were too busy, saying, well, what am I going to say ahead of that NBA game to Michael B. Jordan when we have our discussion about race? Yeah, I guess only certain racial groups count, right, Kamala? Forget about the detained kids at the border. F them. They're the wrong race. Can't have a big riot about them and burn down the city, can you? Swalwell. Eric Swalwell. Those in the intel community who leaked Chinese spy story about me aren't honoring their oaths. Oh no! Did you honor your oath when you banged a Chinese spy? I don't think you did. You dummy. You farting idiot. This guy is a disgrace. I mean, if I was still a Democrat, I'd be mortified that they didn't get rid of this guy. How could you not? Out of all the people still in the Democratic Party, why would you close ranks around Swalwell? Just tell him to quit. You got a million Democrats. Just replace him. He's in California. His seat is safe. Just replace him. I mean, Jesus, now you got him. You got Cuomo. How many albatrosses do you want to create for yourselves, you dummies? He shouldn't be on the Intel Committee, at least. Confounding for Biden administration to announce press conference 9 days in advance, McKinney. White House announced Tuesday Biden would face the media on March 25th. They're trying to get him ready. Biden's a mess. He's a weirdo. He's not going to be able to stand up to that scrutiny. They're trying to figure out how they can do it and how it'll look good. Guess they could do a Zoom call. If they did it via Zoom, they could have everybody off camera prompting Joe. That would be one way to do it. The other way to do it would be just to heavily screen the reporters who are going to be there to prop him up anyway. But there's no one left to attack as part of the problem. So they need something to report. So they end up slowly turning against him. Not directly against him, obviously. They couldn't directly go at him, but they're gonna start to say, well, what about these kids at the border? And, the relationship between the U.S. and Russia doesn't seem very good. I mean, all these issues that are now coming up because he caused them. You can't hide them forever. What the F are they supposed to talk about? Your dogs aren't even in the White House anymore. GOP leadership urging no vote on DREAM Act to protect young immigrants from deportation. And thus, Fox News continues to turn into CNN. The House is scheduled to vote on the DREAM Act on Thursday. Look, the whole thing about the DREAM Act, about all these, they just don't address the immigration crisis at all. So Republicans shouldn't vote on this simply because they've got to put Democrats in a spot where they'll actually discuss immigration. So yeah, I'd say don't vote for it. Now, this is protecting young immigrants from deportation. The problem is Biden doesn't want to deport anybody. So you got to jam him up somehow until he comes up with a reasonable compromise. There is no reasonable compromise with him now. He's created a massive crisis on the border. And there was an interview, I was watching the Lotus Eaters this morning. By the way, I got another question on the Lotus Eaters, so check that out at about the hour mark. But they were showing a clip, and they interviewed a guy from Honduras who brought in his daughter, and he had a smartphone. And the Lotus Eaters were wondering how he could afford to call Honduras from America and still needed to cross the border illegally. So that was a question, but he basically said, oh, well, Joe Biden said we could come, so we came. So that's direct evidence that Joe Biden has created this horrible, horrible situation at the border. He didn't need to create it. He could have just said, well, Trump put all this stuff in place. I'm not going to disturb it. We're going to slowly, pass certain things. Nope, he just ripped it all out, and now he's got all these problems, which he's ignoring. Poll, 75% support voter ID law, including 60% of Democrats. Yeah, no kidding. Why wouldn't you at least have a driver's license? I mean, you need a driver's license. Now you need two forms of ID to get on a damn plane. I think you need a passport in some places. I think in New Jersey we need a passport because for some reason, out of all the things New Jersey goes along with, we didn't go with the real ID thing. I don't know why. I'm glad we didn't. I'm totally against the real ID, but in New Jersey, we don't have the real ID. So, therefore, it's probably because some union guy has that, contract bid from the state and he doesn't want his scam ruined. Um, so, when we go to the airport, I think we now have to use our passports just to go on a regular domestic flight now because our driver's license aren't good enough to get on a plane. But you don't need that for voting. You don't need anything. You just show up, you sign. They have a record of you, but you could sign anybody's name if you just know their address. So that's a problem. I don't care if I had to show my driver's license. Why not? Seems like it would be simple. Seems like it would be smart. Now, they would still have people voting. They were forging driver's licenses like crazy during a certain election. Honk, honk, wink, wink. In fact, there was a big bust, and they found like hundreds and hundreds of fake driver's licenses. So, seems like a smart move. So it's got bipartisan support. Hopefully it passes. So maybe it will make the Democrats' efforts to subvert the election, pointless if you pass the voter ID law nationwide. And finally, watch live as DHS Mayorkas defends his side door max immigration plans. President Joe Biden's Homeland Defense Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas faces a House Oversight Committee hearing today where he will defend his plans to expand immigration levels by opening side doors in the nation's immigration law. He would like to have roughly 1 million immigrants annually in the country. Now, can we absorb that many people? Probably. But Sticks and Hammer pointed this out, I think today, in his video. We actually don't need tons and tons of people anymore. There was a time where we did because we had a lot of undeveloped land. Now we don't. And, a lot of these people end up, they can't become citizens. They're here illegally. They get this weird sort of middle ground and status where they're never citizens, but they're kind of been living here for a long time, like a lot of the people who would be impacted by the DREAM Act. Now, leftists would argue, you got to make them citizens right away. Yeah, everybody's a citizen. Boom, right away. But that's not necessarily a good thing. They should go through some sort of process. There are cases, plenty of cases, throughout decades and decades of history where criminals come to this country. They're looking to escape charges in other countries. There are cases where people who are diseased come to this country. And there are just people who we don't necessarily need. And they're not coming here because and we're not talking about asylum seekers. That's different. There are certain instances when asylum is warranted, like during Venezuela's crisis. I would say Venezuela would be one of the rare exceptions. If you've got refugees from Venezuela, people are starving, the socialist regime is oppressive, that's a problem. That's not what's happening in Mexico or Central America. Those regimes are not actively repressive, I'll say. They're not great, but they're not being oppressive, most of them. So there's no urgency here. And we don't need the people. It's depressing our wages. And right now we're going through a tough time in the middle of a pandemic, and you won't even test these people. So no, don't let them in right now. Let's get our house in order. Let's finish up with the pandemic BS. Maybe end that. And then get control of the border, and then let people in. Then you could say, okay, 1 million people, if that's the number. I think that's a little high. I think you'd want to roll that back. But whatever number it is, you need to control the border so only that number comes in, or something very close to it. You need to have some sort of measure of control of your border. If you have no border, you might as well say 10 million. You might as well say 100 million. It won't matter. You won't know. Oh, Biden administration, when will you learn? Probably never. And we only got another 3 years, 9 months to go.